I had the pleasure of interviewing Josh Pachter, a writer, editor, instructor, husband, and father. Without further ado, Josh.
A couple of years ago, I did a book for Jeff and Doug at Crippen Landru called The Man Who Read Mysteries, and it's subtitled The Short Fiction of William Britton. Bill Britton was a very, very dear friend of mine, and I suggested a book of his stories to, I guess probably at that time it would have been Doug. And he jumped on it. He said that readers from Crippen Landru had been asking for a Britton collection. So Bill, for Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine back in the 60s and 70s, wrote a series of 11 short stories that were sort of tributes to some of the great crime writers of the past, which of course is right up Crippen Landru's alley. The stories were mostly called The Man Who Read. To take those 11 stories and make a book out of them, but it wasn't long enough. So Doug suggested that we add to the Man Who Read stories some number of stories from another of Bill Britton's series, which were the Leonard Strang stories. Leonard Strang, Mr. Strang, was a high school science teacher at a high school in an unnamed state. So we picked out an assortment of about 7 of the Mr. Strang stories, added them to the 11 Man Who Read stories, and made a book out of it. The book did very well, sold well, so what we're looking to do in 2022 is to gather together in one volume all the rest of the Mr. Strang stories. My hope is that maybe around 2024, we'll do a 3rd volume to fill out the complete short fiction of William Britton. As far as something I would want to edit myself, I have a project that's been in the back of my head now for about 30 years. I'm not sure that it's right for Crippen Landru, but if I could make that determination, I would say, damn it, it is. I lived overseas for about 15 years, throughout the 80s and a little bit of time before and after. And during the 80s, I was in Germany, teaching for an American university on American military bases. And I had a wacky idea. I wanted to do a book of short stories called Partners in Crime. And the book would be 15 or 18 or 20 short crime stories, each written collaboratively by 2 people working together. In each case, one of the 2 people would be me. So there'd be a story by me and William Britton, and a story by me and Patricia McGarr, and a story by me and Edward D. Hoke, and so on. So this was before the internet. So it was pre-internet, at least pre-me having access to the internet. I think the military had it, but I wasn't in the military. And I was in Germany. And the writers I wanted to work with were all in the United States. So I sent transatlantic snail mail letters of writers who I knew and pitched the idea to them. And most of them said, yeah, let's write a short story together. So I wound up writing about, I think it was around 15 collaborative short stories back and forth by international snail mail, all pretty much simultaneously. So I would go out and I would get the day's mail, and there might be 4 or 5 envelopes in it, one from this writer with the next piece of our story, and one from this other writer with the next piece of our story, and so on. And I worked on them all simultaneously. I got a dozen or more of these stories finished. All but one of them appeared in a variety of different magazines and anthologies, but the book just never happened. So I would love to pitch to Crippen Landru Partners in Crime. Doug, Jeff, are you listening? Well, NOVA, first of all, is Northern Virginia Community College. And that's where I'm teaching now. I do not teach writing or English in any way, shape, or form. I teach communication studies, and that mostly means public speaking, interpersonal communication, intercultural communication, and film appreciation. As far as what I can take back or have taken back from from my work with students, that's an interesting question, and I'm not sure that I really have a good answer for it. I don't know if this is a function of me getting older or if it's a function of community college students in general. But I have found that over the last maybe 8 or 10 years, and I don't think it's just me getting older, because I've talked about this with much younger colleagues, and we all say the same thing. Community college students, at least at our campus of our community college, seem to have gotten lazier. I find that it's distressing how little pleasure reading they do of anything that wasn't written by J.K. Rowling. They don't read for pleasure. They read for school, if they're good students, and some of them don't even read for school. So I think probably if I've taken anything away from the work that I've done at the college level, it's maybe not a good lesson. And that lesson would be that you have to make things, I think, easier on the reader nowadays than you used to if you really want to capture the reader. In ways that, for the most part, are really good. Go back to own voices. There's a very strong effort being made right now to open up the doors of the publishing industry to writers of color. There's a new group of crime writers of color, which is within less than a year has become very, very active, thanks to the work of people like Sean Cosby and Gigi Pondian, and many others. I think there's a lot more attention being paid to the LGBT community authors. Look at the Lammy Awards that are offered by Lambda Literary as an example of some national and international attention being paid to writers of that community or members of that community. Women, women have always been amongst the best crime writers, but they haven't always gotten the reviews. In fact, they often haven't gotten the reviews that male authors get. They haven't had the sales traditionally that male authors get, but that is changing. And in fact, some of the best-selling authors in the business right now are women, are people of color, are LGBTQ authors. These are, I think, very, very healthy changes. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah, because if everybody were just to sit back and applaud the status quo, then the status quo remains the status quo. You have to speak out. And it's not enough if just the underrepresented authors speak out, because the rest of the world has a tradition of not paying enough attention to underrepresented authors, which is why they are underrepresented in the first place. It's important for us straight old white guys to speak out and say this has to change.